Have you ever asked a money question and got the answer? It depends. Should I buy a house? Well, it depends. Should I invest right now? It depends. Should I pay off debt first? It depends. If you're like me, after a while, you start thinking, does anyone actually know the right answer?
It's almost like people are guessing, or like there should be a rule that works for everyone. But the truth is, the reason the answer is always it depends is because real life doesn't give simple answers.
Most people think money is just a math problem, but it's not. It's a human problem. It involves risk, time, emotions, goals, and the things you can't predict. And that means the right answer changes depending on the person.
And that's hard to accept because we all want certainty. We want someone to say, do this and don't do that. Follow this rule and they'll be fine.
We as humans are always searching for one truth, one clear answer, one story that makes us feel the world is predictable. But most of the important decisions in life don't work like that. They're not just complicated, they're complex. And complex problems don't have one right answer. So today we're breaking down why that answer is actually the most honest answer you can get and how to think about money the right way in a world that doesn't give simple rules.
This is the Fi Guys. Let's get into it.
In today's episode, we're exploring why the best answers in finance are conditional, not absolute, and why that's actually a sign of good advice, not bad ones. We are going to dive into philosophy, decision-making, and real financial planning to explain why money is not just math. It's a complex human problem. Because people want simple rules, but life doesn't run on simple rules. Money decisions involve goals, risk, emotions, timing, and most importantly, uncertainty, which means the right answer depends on the situation and the person. Good advice feels unsatisfying because reality is complicated. Bad advice feels satisfying because it ignores reality. So Dom, I know that over our time on the podcast, you ask me constant questions and I always answer, it depends. And I know that that's not a satisfactory answer. Oftentimes I'll even say before I answer the question, you're going to hate me for saying this, but it depends. So I've been wondering, how am I going to bring up this subject to our listeners, to you? How can I teach that it depends is actually the best answer to give in our world today that is so complex, so complicated? And I think today we're going to have to go a lot into philosophy in order to find where that answer really lies.
I was thinking, for the thumbnail of this video today, I think it'll just be, you're going to hate that I'm going to say this. That's just going to be in bold red text. And the title will be something like, this podcast, it depends on what you want to hear today or something like that. One of the top 15 things I was considering banning in my life was the answer, it depends. When I was growing up, my mom banned the phrase, I don't know. So I can never say, I don't know. I got to come up with something. And I was like, man, depends. Got to get that one out of there. But this is the episode that finally solves the age-old problem that is in my world of the answer of it depends. Right. I loved what you were saying in the intro about how, we're complex. We crave certainty. We want what? It's funny. This reminds me of the first time we met. I think I asked you, I'm like, so what are you investing in? Like, what is there like a certain stock, anything? And it's like, no, of course not. And that's like one of the only times it's like got a straight answer. It's like, no, Tom, no, that's not, you're far off. Don't do that. But no, I'm excited because our philosophy debates are always ones I look forward to, I cherish, I re-listen to, I study. You put them in the earbuds as you go to sleep, and then you wake up, and you're like, I am Marcus Aurelius now. So yeah, I'm excited to get into this. I'm trying to think of like a good, like witty, like, it depends, but I'm sure I'll come up with something. But yeah, let's get right into today's episode. I hope you guys are taking notes. I hope you guys can join us in the comments for our little debate and our explanation on it depends. So let's get into it.
Yeah. So as we get started, first we're going to start in the realm of philosophy, and then we're going to move on to some real life applications. But there was a book that I read. It was by Yuval Noah Harari. And he's written a few books, but his most recent book, it's called Nexus. And it's about how information systems work. And this is one of those books that as I read it, I had to constantly stop and like really, really try to wrap my head around what the message was saying. There were a few moments that I had to stop and like legitimately reconsider the entire structure of what I had built the world around, of what like I thought the world to be. Because the book Nexus, it explores how humans constantly look for one simple story that makes the world feel predictable. We want one truth, one rule, one correct answer. But most real world decisions don't work that way. Things like money, politics, relationships, health, they exist inside systems that are always changing. And that's why the honest answer of it depends is often the right answer, even though it's not satisfactory. Not because people don't know, not because your advisor, your coach, your mentor doesn't know the right answer, but because truth is contextual. So, one of the reasons people get frustrated with financial advice is because they think there should be one right rule when they're searching for truth. And the entire book of Nexus really gets into what is that? What is truth? And we're about to move into that philosophical discussion of that. But before we do, Dominic, what are you thinking already?
Well, a quick question. I know everyone who listens to the podcast is usually on the hunt for more knowledge. If you're here, you are on the hunt for more knowledge. But I have a question about this book. Would you say this is a beginner book for someone who's just getting into this world, or is this more of a high level book? When would you kind of recommend this one along the stages?
No, I would certainly recommend it to anybody, and you're going to get something different out of it. It's not a finance book. It's like I think majority of the books that I read that really give me like a new insight into finance have nothing to do with finance. Sometimes I just read books that just pique my interest. Yuval, Harari, he wrote the books Sapiens and Homo Deus. He's written a few other books that I really recommend to people. But his most recent book, Nexus, is one of those books that I picked up. I didn't even know what it was going to be about. I thought it was going to be kind of silly, like information system. So I don't even know what the heck that means.
Yeah.
But I read it because I like the author, and then by the end of it, I was like, this might be one of the most groundbreaking books I've ever read. That I like finally helps me to contextualize things that I couldn't understand. Because just like other people, just like all of our listeners, like you, Dominic, when I would go and ask people, mentors, coaches, people that I'm looking for advice from a question, and they give me the answer, it depends. I used to take that as like this person's dumb because this guy over here is telling me this is the right answer, and he's saying it with certainty, and therefore that person must be right. Even though, how many times do we go online? Do we talk to even AI now that's getting worse and something that gives you this certain answer? This is the answer. We try it in our lives and it doesn't work out. So then what do? We say, oh, that person was wrong. And we go and find somebody else that's certain.
I think that's one of the things that I've definitely learned from this podcast and learned from you. I've learned so much from you over the years, Chris, and I really appreciate you being able to, not just teach me, but teach everyone who's listening. I'm just the one in the front row, I guess. But, between you and I's movie references and our love of Star Wars, you've kind of taught me that, obviously, like, only a Sith deals in absolutes, but it's true though. While it is a bit from a movie, there's so much truth to it. And when someone says, oh, this is exactly why this is this, and this 100%, it's like nothing is really 100%, right? And I think that's one of the things, like you said, we crave certainty, but when you see someone give certainty, you should put your kind of your flashers on, your red flags should go up a little bit, right? Because while it worked for them, doesn't mean it's going to work for us, right, Chris?
Yeah. I mean, because you have to remember that just because it worked for them, it's contextual to their life, to where they were, to this time and place that they happened to be in when that happened. And then even for you to say, oh, it worked for me, or it was the right decision for me, like we don't know what right and wrong is. Like we don't really know, because you could have taken a different decision that could have put your place in a different life, in a different better place. But you don't have access to that information. You only know what did happen, not what could have happened.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me of the quote we've been saying more and more often recently on the episodes, and the one from last week of, you're never, when you never step in the river twice. You step in the river once, the river is changed. Next time you step into it, I'm butchering the quote. You got to give me the quote, Chris. I feel like it's pertinent to this example.
It's okay. You said it almost perfectly. It's you never step into the same river twice.
Because the river changes and you're not the same person.
Yep.
And I feel like that's how it is. It's like, hey, I went fishing. This is a great spot to go fishing in the river. Let me take you guys back here. And you come back and it's like, where's all the fish? It's like, dude, it's frozen. The lake's frozen over. Like, what are we talking? Um, and that's how I feel about for advice when people are giving advice sometimes. It's like, oh man, this is especially I see it a lot in, and I hope my parents aren't watching this, but sometimes you'll see it a lot in like when parents give advice, like, oh, go to college, get a job out of college, like start a family, or like, what are you doing? Like, why aren't you working for 60 years for the same company anymore? It's like, sorry, mom, dad, like that world doesn't exist anymore. A lot different now. Um, but let's continue. Let's continue.
Yeah. So as we go through life, we're always searching for one source of truth, right? We want one consistent, nice narrative that works. And when people think of the word truth, they just kind of assume they know what the word is. Like, I know what truth is. It's what's real. It's the right answer. But like we said, truth is nebulous. And this is where we're about to get really into the philosophical part of it. But for our listeners that normally don't like philosophy, like this probably is the most important part. Philosophy, thinking about your thinking, is probably one of the most important things you can begin to do. It's metacognition. Can I think about how I think? Because the way that we perceive the world is through our brains and it's through thinking. So we don't perceive reality. We perceive what we think about reality. Like, so as we talk about truth, people always believe, okay, there's one source of truth, which may be true. But today we're going to be talking about actually 4 different sources of truth because there are many sources of truth in life, but I'm going to break it down to 4. And many people have probably heard about this first one, objective truth. Truth, whether you believe it or not. Some examples of objective truth are gravity, math, physics, biology. It doesn't depend on your opinion. People want money to work like this, to be an objective truth. It doesn't matter if I decide or if I believe that gravity is real. If I jump off a tower, I'm going to fall down to the bottom of it. It doesn't matter if I want the sun to rise tomorrow or not. We're still going around the sun. The earth is going to continue to turn. I can't stop that. And if all human beings disappeared tomorrow, those things would still be true. That's the way I've always thought about objective truth is if human beings weren't here tomorrow or weren't here, Thanos snap, boom, all of us are gone. These things are going to continue to work. They're going to continue to be that same thing. And that's the way that people want money to work. They want one right formula. They want one rule. They want what's the exact percentage, what's the right investment. But money doesn't fully live here. Money doesn't live fully in objective truth. People want financial advice to be like math. Math is an objective truth, but it isn't. Money is not an objective truth. Money is not just math. Like we say on the podcast all the time, personal finance is far more personal than is finance. Being good with money has to do with 80 to 90% these intangibles rather than the 10% that is objective truth. But people want to focus on the objective truth, the 10, 20%, rather than the remainder of it, rather than the more important, much larger percentage.
Chris, since you've given, this a lot more thought than I have, you've read the book, you've meditated, you've studied this, and something that you've really kind of become a lot more passionate about. In your in your dealings and your teachings and whatnot, why do you think? And I don't know if there is I swear to God, Chris, if you give me, it depends. I'm gonna reach through this damn camera. I'm gonna kill you. But it could be an answer, right? But I'm I'm curious. Why do you have any idea on why we crave certainty so much? It seems I don't know if that's like a flaw of humanity that we can't just be. Why can't we just be okay with the uncertainty? Why do you think we crave certainty so much?
Yeah, I'm not going to say it depends, but it does depend. Um, but I have a thought on this.
Okay.
I don't know if it's right, but I think it's that we as human beings, we're the only being that we know of that is sure we're going to die. Like we know that one day we will not be here anymore. Most other animals that we know of, or that we at least believe we can think of, don't know that. Like they don't know instinctively that I will no longer be here. They're much more momentary and like, hey, I'm here in the moment rather than being in the future or the past, like our brain predicts us to do. So I think that level of uncertainty that someday I'm not going to be here anymore, I won't exist, scares the hell out of us. And I think if most of you, I know if I meditate on this and like you really sit there and you think about it, that uncertainty is terrifying. It really is. And maybe you don't have to fear death to like realize like our brains can't even begin to conceive of a day that we're not in it. Like if you really sat and you meditated and you're like, all right, like tomorrow I woke up or tomorrow I don't wake up and I'm gone. What does the world look like without me there? And maybe we can sit there and we could conceive of it and be like, all right, I'm not there. My wife, my spouse is going to be happy or sad. My parents are going to be whatever. This is where all these
Happy.
things are going to be happy. Yeah. Sorry, not happy.
Oh
So
my
hopefully they'll
God.
be sad. If they're happy, you messed up.
Oh man. That's maybe you got like a huge insurance policy, a big trust they got going, kicking their way.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I had
It's,
to kick in
it's
on
all
that
good.
one. Okay.
But we can think this through and we're like, yeah, okay. Like I can envision it, Chris. Like I'm probably have a better vision than you because I can envision this happening. But then where are you in that? You are still in there observing it. The observer is you. You're observing all of these things happening. You cannot conceive of a world that your consciousness does not inhabit. Because in order for you to even see that in your mind's eye, you have to inhabit it. So now when we talk about that one day there will be a point where your consciousness, like you will not be able to inhabit this life. It gives us so much uncertainty. The biggest questions we ask in life are, why are we here? Where are we going? What's the purpose of all of it?
Mm.
These are
You know,
big, scary questions.
very big scary questions. Very big scary questions. That's next episode, right? Um we can solve it all in 2 episodes, I promise. Said no one ever. So objective truths are something that society can kind of get behind, right? I would assume this is like the easiest one of them all, right? Math, physics, gravity, biology, simple enough, right? What
Yeah.
else we
So,
got?
yeah, objective truths are probably the easiest ones for people to be able to understand, right? Because
Okay.
for all intents and purposes, there is a right answer.
Every now and again, it seems like I'll see like something on my feed where it's like, oh, but breaking news, 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4 anymore. It's 5. But what are we doing? So,
Well, there is a different like objective truths work because they have been predictable for all of time. But as we
mhm,
study more into like physics goes into goes into objective truths. But then when you move into quantum physics, we're no longer in objective truth land. So it gets extremely complicated, extremely fast. So we're not even going to talk about that for theories of our discussion, because in quantum physics, it seems like things that should be objective have an entity to not be objective, to be able to be subjective. But we're not talking about that for our discussion. What we're discussion for our discussion is objective truths are true, regardless if human beings are there or not. It's just truth.
okay.
Okay. So that's the first form of truth. And most people believe like, all right, there's only one form of truth, but I'm going to introduce you to a second form of truth. Maybe people have heard of this one. This is called subjective truth. This is true for individuals. And some examples might be what makes you happy? What stresses you out? What feels safe? What feels meaningful? What kind of life do you want? These are subjective truths. Again, if human beings, if you stop to exist tomorrow, all of us, these questions would not matter anymore. These are subjective truths. Money decisions live here majority of the time. They live here a lot. Examples like this might be, should I retire early or work longer? What's my risk tolerance? Should I spend money or continue savings? Or what kind of lifestyle choices should I make? The right financial decision depends on what kind of life you want. And most people, when they hear about subjective truth, they believe that this is an objective truth. And this is the reason that so many people get so hung up and they fight one another online about the right way to do finances, because they're taking their subjective truth, what is right for me, and they're applying it to everybody else as objective truth. So it'd be like me saying, I really like Mexican food. And you saying, no, Italian food is the right food to eat. you can see that in this food discussion, there are different things. Like people have preferences, they have nuance. Like some people might like Japanese food, some people might not like that. You don't sit there and like badger them saying that you're wrong. This is the right food. This is the best food. We all discover that we have difference of opinions. But when it comes to money, people lose that nuance and they believe that I must be right. My truth, my subjective truth that is only true to me must be able to be applied to everybody else. And that's where when it comes to you, Dominic, when you're talking about your parents, and I notice it with my parents too, and I'm sure many of our listeners do, this is the objective truth of how to get to be good. In order to figure out the right way through life is to do exactly what I say. Because subjectively to me, it's what worked. And if you're saying that what I did was wrong, then you're saying that I am wrong. And if you're saying that I am wrong, then you're saying that that I'm not enough, that I'm not all these things. And we start triggering all of these emotions and we start to feel like, no, you're wrong. I have to be right.
I definitely like the objective truths a lot better than the subjective truths. Not there's too many emotions tied up in subjective truths. Too many. I mean, it's almost like landmines you're going to step on when this one happens. But I get what you're saying, though. You're saying that this is where most of the debates happen in regards to, like, say, um, should I retire at 65? Right? It's like, oh, some people believe that they should, right? And others believe they want to work past. And that's kind of what we're getting at here, right, Chris?
Hmm.
That would be one of the like a subjective truth.
Yeah, subjective truth is it only applies to you as an individual. But
Okay.
too many people, they think that a subjective truth applies to all people because how else could it not? It worked for me. It has to work for everybody else. And if it doesn't work for everybody else, then does that mean that I could have made a different decision or that my decision isn't 100% correct? The other place you see this a lot, for maybe to our listeners, to get you another example, money is probably the biggest place you see this. But another real place you see this is in parenting. If you go on any forum about like what's the right way to sleep train your child or to discipline your child, you'll find every single parent has an opinion. They have a subjective truth that they are going to place on everybody else as an objective truth. Saying if you do this to your kid, you're basically abusive. If you do this, it means that you're negligent, blah, 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 blah. And they're all just different decisions that we all take as this must be the right way because this is the way that I choose to do things.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing with our money.
That's a
If you
great
save, you're
example.
stupid. If you invest, you're stupid. If you spend all your money, you're stupid. Well, they're all right and they're all wrong simultaneously.
I think for us as humans, it's so difficult, emotionally speaking, to take the information in and be like, listen, you are right and you are wrong at the same time. I am right and I am wrong at the same time. And then you kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit and it's like, what is right? What is wrong? Does it all matter? Everything's going to be what it's going to be. Let's just kind of go with the flow a little bit. And that's very difficult to do. And man, when you were giving that example about parenting, I was like, man, I feel bad for like newborn mothers and because they have to go through like oh wow, you're giving your baby formula. That's not what I did. That's not what I did. It's like, okay, it's different child, different time. Um, but yeah, no, you see this a lot in finance as well, Chris, where a lot of people will get advice from, quote unquote, certainty advice from people who really shouldn't be giving any advice. Or how do you
Yeah,
find that? Yeah.
of course you do. I mean, how often do you, hey, I just started this new job. Oh, okay. How much are you going to put in your 401k? You should do 6% because 6% is the right amount. Or, hey, I just got this paycheck. Oh, well, don't spend all of that. You got to make sure that you do this. Or you should
Yeah.
spend all of it because you need to do this. Or we'll take, like, I feel like money is one of those things where, at least with parenting, only parents are the ones who are usually going to sit there and say, like, I know what to do because at least they have some advice. But with
Yeah.
money, everyone interacts with money. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a subjective truth that they believe to be an objective truth that they're going to tell you this is the right answer because it must be the right answer because it gives me certainty to think that I know what the right answer is and that what I did was the right answer.
People love to be right, don't they? They
They do.
crave it. They crave it. And I don't know, maybe it goes back to like all the way back to like high school and be like, man, I just want to be popular. I just want to be loved. I just want to be liked. I just want to be respected. But I think the truest form of, success is being able to live with yourself. And I think that's what's so hard for a lot of people is to just be like, man, I might be right, I might be wrong. The advice might be right, might be wrong, but let's just focus on us right now. How about that? Let's just do the best we can for ourselves, and that'll kind of ooze out, and hopefully it will affect other people. But
Yeah. One of the things we used to say a lot on the podcast, or at least I used to, is the one thing that matters when your head hits the pillow is how do you feel about yourself when you're by yourself? But that's hard because we live in a place, in a world where we don't live alone. We live in relationship to other beings. So again, there's that and. We have to keep both things in our heads simultaneously, that both things are true, and people don't like that. So I've talked about two forms of truth, right? Objective and subjective. And most people say, okay, those are the two truths. It's easy. Like I'm done. Like, thank God we're done with truth. Do you know of any other forms of truth, Dominic?
couldn't possibly be introspective. Couldn't be that, could it? Definitely don't have the notes open. I'm cheating. I'm cheating. I must deny. I have the notes open on this one because I too was curious. I'm like, man, yeah, there's got to be. What else could there be, Chris? I mean, you've got the truths of the universe, the truths to me. I what other domains are there? I take a look at the notes, and there's this introspective truth that I'm about to learn all about. Let's
Yeah.
get into that one. What's introspective truth about?
So it's actually not introspective. It's intersubjective truth.
That's why I only glance at the notes. If I stare too long, I get the information right. So
So,
intersubjective truth. Okay. What do we got for intersubjective truth?
yep. So intersubjective truth is something that's a little bit different, but this is something that most people are going to understand the moment I sort of talk about it. This is truth that exists only because enough people agree that it exists. And this is where it starts to get very complicated very fast. So we're going to slow it down a little bit. Examples of intersubjective truth might be money, laws, governments, stock markets, retirement rules, social norms, borders, economies. Again, remember, go back to objective truth. If human beings stopped existing tomorrow, would any of these things matter anymore? Intersubjective truths only exist because enough people believe that they do. They only work because people believe in them. Money is not an objective truth. If we stop tomorrow, I guarantee that like pigeons would not start using our currency. Money is an intersubjective truth. Money only exists because enough human beings believe that money exists. For example, if I was to give you millions of dollars and put you on a desert island, or just like an island in the middle of nowhere with people who don't understand currency. Maybe I put you on one of those like places off of India where there's like those early hunter-gatherer people. And I put you there with bags of money and I say, all right, go ahead and exist. You will not be able to go up to those people and say, hey, take my currency. My currency works really, really well for buying you things, because they will not hold the same intersubjective truth about what money is to you. Now, might be one of the most complicated things. So I really want to make sure, Dominic, like, do you feel like you have an understanding as to intersubjective truth or how those things work?
So intersubjective truth, based on what you said, is it's truths that exist in society that are bound to society, and without society, they don't exist.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yeah. And this is where it gets complicated. So a dollar only works because we all agree that a dollar works. And this is the part where intersubjective truth gets very complicated. Intersubjective truth only needs two people to agree. So you can have multiple levels of intersubjective truth within a wider society of intersubjective truths. It's like a language, right? If I have a language that only I speak, well, I have a subjective truth about my new language. But if I get another friend, if I teach you my language, now we have an intersubjective truth of this is a language that we can speak. But we still speak English within our country, which is a larger intersubjective truth. Again, if we all stopped existing tomorrow, languages would go away, money would go away, laws would go away, borders would go away. I think many of us, we think, oh, these borders, this economy, all of these things are objective truths, but they're not. They're intersubjective truths. I'll give you probably one of the best examples that I have, and that's going to be inflation. Most people think when they think about the economy, okay, inflation is a natural law. Like inflation has to happen in order for us to be spurred to spend money. But inflation is an intersubjective truth. It was made up by people who decided that we need to have inflation in order to get people to spur people to spend money. But it's not true in any way, shape, or form. We have the ability to change it at any time, any place, because it's not reality. It's something that we have decided on. Same thing with money. If we decided tomorrow that we don't want to use dollars anymore, or if enough of the government decided we don't want to use dollars anymore, we're going to use seashells, and enough people agreed on that, or store owners stopped taking dollars because they want seashells, then we would have to change and our intersubjective truth would move pretty darn quickly.
Hmm. That is very interesting. That is very interesting. So it only works because it works with more than two people, two or more.
Yeah, and then the real truth is it only works because the dominant power structure is the one that says that this is the right way to do things.
Okay.
So if
Okay.
you think about our discussion, we talked about money. When people used to say, like, what is money? Well, money used to be backed by a gold standard, right? Where like you can trade your money for this gold. And then after the Bretton Woods Accords, we went off of that gold standard. And then it just basically went, well, we say this money has value because we say this money has value.
Yeah.
And then it kind of went to, if you don't believe us, then our military will tell you that our money has value.
Yeah.
And this is the world that we live in.
Yeah.
Intersubjective truth is so difficult because rules change, markets change, taxes change, culture changes, opportunities change. So sometimes when someone says it depends, in fact, most of the time when someone says it depends, it's the right answer because answers change. It's an intersubjective truth. Financial advice lives in an intersubjective system, not an objective truth. So when we're talking about money advice, if someone asks those questions, you're not only asking an objective truth, because there is not an objective truth majority of the time. Math is an objective truth. So like an objective truth would be like, hey, I'm making I'm making $100 a paycheck, but I'm spending $200 a paycheck. How much longer do I have? Objective truth would be the math is not mathing. Like you have no more time. But when someone asks most financial questions, that only applies to like 1% of the time, right? 10% of the time it's an objective truth. Majority of the time they're asking subjective, so individual, or intersubjective truths. And they're looking for a right answer as if as an objective truth that can be given when in reality that does not exist.
Okay. So it's starting to connect. I hope for the viewers it's starting to connect as well. I think we've given I don't know how what I'm kind of thinking here is what other examples can you give or ones that you see that are like the most common ones for the intersubjective truths? I know we talked about money and seashells. I really like that one. But what other ones are there so that we can really like fully completely wrap our heads around this one, Chris?
Other ones that are intersubjective truths,
Yeah.
what about language?
Okay.
Language is an intersubjective truth. We all, like we in America, we speak English, right?
Yeah.
But before we were here, before Americans colonized, we did this land speak English? In America before that? Was America even a place before? Like people take their countries as an objective truth. Like this has always been here. But every single country only exists because enough people believe that it exists. Think of the Gulf of Mexico. Think of that sea that used to be the Gulf of Mexico. Now it's the Gulf of America, right? That's an
Yeah.
intersubjective truth. Somebody just decided one day, I want to change the name. And they did. And enough people went with it to say, okay, now it's called the Gulf of America. Think of every country when you look through your history of like places that this is and will always be, and now they are not. Because enough people believe that now they do not exist. Now this thing is no longer there. Borders move and change. Everything moves and changes based off intersubjective truth.
That's so interesting. Yeah, that's perfect. That's just what I was looking for. You know, I remember one time I was flying to I don't know, somewhere in Texas. And the pilot came over the loudspeaker midway through the flight. Or he's like, "Yeah, if you look off to the right side, you can see the Gulf of America." And I had only heard about the Gulf of America like through like social media. I'm like, somebody's gonna adopt that. It's goofy. I mean, my whole life, everyone's whole life, it's been Gulf of Mexico. It's not gonna change. And he said it now, and it was funny because like half the plane was like, "Yeah, yeah, Gulf of America," and the other was like, "Boo, boo, the Bull America." And I was just like, "Oh, intersubjective truth. I don't know this yet, but one day I will learn that this is an intersubjective truth." But I love the language example. I think that's a perfect example that, we've all kind of accepted that this is what we're speaking, this is what we know. I know that hamburger to me means hamburger to you. It's the same thing, right? That's our objective truth. And of course, leave it to me to bring it back to a food reference. Of course, I love that. Okay, okay. I think I've got a lock on this one. I for right this second. I'm feeling confident right now. I know. I'm sure if I go down the line a little bit and do a little bit more meditating, I'll go deeper down the rabbit hole and get lost like Allison. Um, but yeah. What else do we have on this one, Chris?
Yeah, before we move on from inner subjective truth, I just want people to
Yeah.
know the more you reflect on this, the more you really think about like, what is it that I know for true? The more you're going to find that majority of what I know is not objective truth or even subjective truth. It's inner subjective truth. It's things that I believe because enough people believe it. And I don't know that it's true for real. And that's okay. Like, that's just the way it is. So I want to bring in one final one. I call this divine truth because it's not really, like, we don't really have access to it. The Stoics called this the logos. Religions call this God. Like, it's like the logos, the true is the real order, the real structure, the real underlying reality that we as human beings don't have access to. This idea of the logos of like true divine truth, it's an ancient idea. It's that there's something, a deeper order to how the world works. It's not just facts, it's not just opinions, it's a structure underneath everything. So that's where wisdom comes in. It's about learning how to live in alignment with this reality that we actually can't even begin to perceive as human beings. And it's, I think when we understand this, like that there is maybe a truer truth than we even have access to. The goal is not forcing reality to meet your expectations, but being able to live in alignment with this reality. So when people want a simple rule when it comes to money, it makes it difficult because good planning is about understanding the system that you're in and how do I work within it. The goal is not to find one rule. It's to understand how the system works and how you are operating in it.
That's a difficult task. That's a very difficult task. Hmm. Interesting. So, do you think that as humans, your definition of logos, my definition of logos, it's all a little bit different. Obviously, I have God. You have what you believe, the universe, or your version. Um, and for this one, it's different for everyone. I would assume, right, Chris?
So a divine truth, the logos, would be the same for everyone. What you choose
Okay.
to call it would be something that's different. Like that doesn't matter. We're talking about like what is true.
Okay.
So for every single person that's like listening to this or hearing this, we all believe that our perception of reality is the right perception of reality. But what you'll kind of understand is that as you talk to different people, get in people's heads, is that your reality is just a reality. It's not the true. It is not the objective reality. It's not the logos. It's not divine
Mhm.
truth. It's only true for you.
Okay.
The best way I can kind of say this is think about your dog. Your dog can smell in 3 dimensions. Like they can smell, they have different oral factory senses that we can't even begin to perceive. Yet we believe we smell everything. Your eyes only pick up 0.3% of the electromagnetic spectrum, not even 1%, 0.3%. You see literally nothing in terms of how much reality is actually out there. Our brains are conceived in a 3-dimensional space that can see up, down, forward, forward, back, left, right. Yet we know through science that there's up to 11 different dimensions that we can't perceive. So it'd be like if you live on a two-dimensional place where you only have the planes to go forward and back, up and down, and now someone said, "All right, now there's a third dimension. You can go left, right, up, down, right?" So you say you're on a flat piece of paper. You can move on this paper. Now someone introduces the ability to jump. You wouldn't be able to understand it. You couldn't understand up and down because you don't have that ability. Now imagine there's 11 more of these. You can't even point to where it is in this reality because it's not. So we all take this as I see truth. I know the way the world actually works. When in reality, we all have blinders on. It'd be like grabbing one of those cool predator helmets, right? And now you can see in like in terms of heat, you can see in different types of patterns. That is where the logos is. It's being able to see all of it simultaneously, where we can see almost none of it.
How do we use this information, Chris? How do we use this in our day-to-day life, the logos one?
The reason that I bring up the logos is because I want people to understand this is the most important thing. You don't see reality. The thought that you do see reality is the thing that is most dangerous. So when someone comes to you with certainty, I know what the right answer is because I see reality. You can know that they do not because no one does. They're giving you their objective truth, their subjective truth as an objective truth, as the logos, as something that is the greatest of all things because it worked for them or because they believe it works for them. So this is the reason that I think about this so much is it frees you up. It frees you up to know, oh, okay, I don't actually know what the right answer is. Therefore, I get to search and get to question and get to keep on trying to grow. Because something I keep on coming back to more and more is the most dangerous thing is someone who is certain, someone who knows the right answer definitively. Because in reality, based off what I'm trying to tell us and based off what I've learned and keep on learning, is that no one knows what reality is. We're all figuring it out. And that's why whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. Like we're all figuring these things out. So you really need to be able to take people who are uncertain or someone who is certain with a grain of salt. But that also means when someone gives you the answer, it depends. It's the correct answer for that situation because the person who's giving you that answer, it depends, realizes, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is for you because I don't know the objective truth. Or maybe I know the objective truth, but I don't know the subjective truth. I don't know the inner subjective truth. And God know that I don't know the logos. I don't know the divine truth. So I can give you one part of the answer, 10% of the answer. I give you the math part, but I can't give you any of the rest of it. Only you can define that for yourself. And that's why the answer, it depends, makes people so pissed off. But that's the reason that it works. People want an objective truth. But money and money decisions live in between objective fact, subjective goals, intersubjective systems. So the answer depends on a few things: the person, the situation, the rules, the times, the environment. This intersubjective system that you're in. That's the reason that if money was a subjective truth or objective truth and that we knew that it was right, it would work across every country. But every country is completely different, right? So imagine that we took someone from America, we told them, hey, the objective truth is you need to save 10% of your income if you want to retire by 65. Then you go to somebody in the Congo who is working to mine cobalt and they make $1 a day after 12 hours in order to make just enough water to survive, enough food to survive, and say, you need to save 10% of that so you can retire one day. That would be extremely offensive. It wouldn't work because the objective, the subjective, and the intersubjective truth that their life lives in is completely different from ours. So the answer, it depends on so many things outside of the person who you're asking the questions to control. When someone says it depends, it's not a weak answer. It's the honest answer. It's the most honest answer that someone could give. The more human the problem is, the less likely it is to have one right answer.
That is perfect. That is the gem of today's episode right there. I love that. No, you're spot on with that. You're absolutely spot on with that. Oh man, the more human the problem is, the less likely it is to have one specific answer. Right? I love that. Yeah, humans add a lot of complexities to these issues, don't we? Bit of an issue, bit of a problem in our world. Okay, okay. So we've talked about what we know. I feel like the objective truth is the easiest one. Like
It
everybody
is.
can kind of get behind that. Subjective truth, I mean, it's like, man, we're already off the rails, and intersubjective. Um, that's tough. That's tough. I think that one's easy ish too. But bringing the logos in, this really, I mean, I feel like we just jumped right into the pool of philosophy here with this one. So I'm in love with that last section. That was a great section. Um,
And the only reason we brought up all of that is to just bring up that, like, it depends is often the right answer because of those four things, because of those truths that we don't have the right answers to. But I want to drive this point home a little bit farther and talk about the difference between complicated and complex problems. Because I think that most people get these two things completely confused. There is a difference between complicated and complex. Complicated problems are hard to solve, but they have a correct answer. Think about math, engineering, fixing a car. They're complicated. Think about a Rubik's Cube. A Rubik's Cube is complicated. If I gave you a Rubik's Cube that was all jumbled up and said, figure this out, there is a right answer. And that Rubik's Cube is a solved Rubik's Cube. That doesn't mean that it's easy to do unless you know how to do it. But it's complicated, but there is a right answer. The right answer is the solved Rubik's Cube. A complex problem, however, involves people, time, and uncertainty, where they have many possible outcomes that can be said as to be correct. So examples of a complex problem are relationships, business, life planning, financial planning. But too many people think, oh, this complex problem is a complicated problem. Therefore, this complex problem that doesn't have one right answer must have a right answer, just like the Rubik's Cube does, just like the puzzle does. If you play a game of Sudoku, there is one right answer for how to beat that Sudoku board. We want that certainty of, like, I won the game. I got the right answer. But we're playing in complex world, not in complicated world. Life is complicated, yes. And it is complex. But in truth, if you really think about it, life is not complicated because there isn't one right answer. Where life is complex and that it's always changing. There is no one right answer. And that's what makes it difficult. But that's what allows us to keep learning and growing. Most people think that finances is complicated. But in truth, finances are complex. And complex problems, again, don't have one right answer. They require judgment. They require context. They require understanding the person and not just the numbers. They need wisdom, the ability to see through and try to find the divine truth, the logos, within these competing systems. And in my reality or in my thought process, we don't have the ability to ever even go near that or touch it. But our goal is to try to live within it. And this is where ancient philosophy like Taoism really comes in and begins to talk about the natural order of the universe. And your goal is to live within it, not to try to make it bend to your whim because you can't.
Complex stuff. Very complex stuff. Or maybe it's complicated. I don't know. Where did you learn all this, Chris?
Where did I learn all of it? Books, reading,
Books. Yeah.
studying, asking teachers. I have people that I reach out to too that I believe are wiser than me. And sometimes when we have nice conversations, I'll get to ask questions. But even people who are smarter, there are many people in life that I think too many people, especially here in America, but I have traveled the world and I have seen this too in other places where they think I'm smart in this one subject. Therefore, I must be smart in all subjects and I have nothing to learn from anybody else. But I've learned things from children in Mexico who couldn't read or even speak the language that I speak. I've learned things from people in Africa who never made more than a few dollars a day. Like, you have to be willing to learn and to not think that you know everything. And it's only through discovery, through like really sitting there and learning and seeing like, oh wow, these people have things that I don't know. And maybe like, yeah, you can't go through life trying to pick up every piece of knowledge because I guarantee you that that's impossible. Like if you had all knowledge in the universe, you had full power. Yeah, you'd have the logos. You'd be there. You'd have divine truth. But you can't. We can't as human beings. They've always tried to explain this to people is like it'd be like trying to teach Spanish to a snake, or it'd be like trying to explain to your dog how the TV works. Like their brain, their capacity doesn't have that capacity to understand it. Same with human beings. Like we don't really understand how a lot of things work, but we believe that we do because we have to believe that we do. It's like asking somebody, "Do you know how a zipper works?" And most people are going to be like, "Yeah, I know how a zipper works. Of course, it's really simple how a zipper works." But in truth, if you say, "Okay, explain the mechanisms of how a zipper works," most people will be like, "I actually, I have, there's a metal piece and a thingy and a tongue, and I do stuff." Most of the times, you don't know how things work. We don't, but we know enough people who know together collectively how things work, and that's how a majority of life is. How does the economy work? How does adoption work? How does healthcare work? How do all these things work? You don't really know. Most people don't know. I mean, a perfect example of this is we got one of the leading economists under the Biden administration trying to explain modern monetary theory to a news outlet where he was talking about how we were able to print money out of nothing, and he just lost the plot. He's, I guess I don't know how this works. Or even the people at the top, people who should be in charge, who should know how it works, don't know how it works because we made it so complicated, so difficult, so outside of the natural order of things by adding on all these layers in order to try to control reality that we made it even more difficult. And this is where money lives. This is where all of these difficult decisions lives, is in this system that is outside of the true systems. And I don't even know what the true systems are. So if you ask me, like, what is the true system? I have no idea.
All right, well, I won't ask that one next. I definitely won't ask that one next. Okay, so we've learned, one of the things that I know this is a little bit off topic, and it just made me think of this when you were saying, like, yeah, I've learned from school children in Mexico. I've learned from, you know, great thought leaders over here. I've read from the best. You've learned from everything, and that's something that I've always done myself as well. Like I try to learn from anyone. I'm no better than anyone. I'm no worse than anyone. I'm just around. Um, how do you how do you inspire someone to learn, Chris? That's one of the things that I really want to get better at, and I'm not really sure where to start. Because, like you said, I mean, you have a lifelong passion for learning and gaining more knowledge, and but how do you install that in someone in a way?
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I think that one of the hardest things for us to be able to come to grips with is that you can't control other people. You can't make other people believe what you believe. You can't, I mean, you can with the barrel of a gun, but like even at that point, they don't really believe it, right?
Yeah,
So I've always thought of it this way. And it's the same way I kind of approach financial planning and approach my business, which doesn't make me a great business person, but it works for me. And it's something that I learned from actually reading about the Buddha and Buddhism, what's called sitting with palms open, that you sit there and you live your life, meditating, doing whatever it is to live the best life with your palms open, ready to give in order to willingly teach your information in order to try to help people, but only when they're ready. I think too many people will go through life trying to force what I believe to be true on other people. But I think as we all know, when someone goes to you and says like, you have to believe this, like this is the best movie, right? This is the best movie, right? No, it's not the best movie. Like, and in fact, your push to like make them be like you actually repels them from the thing that you want them to be. So I think the best way that we can teach anyone to do something that you believe to be very important is to live your life in accordance with it. And then people will see, oh, this person is maybe living in better accordance with reality. and it's working for them, and my life is not working for me. So I guess
Lead by
the goal
example.
is to not have the goal. The goal is to just live your life to the best of your ability and
Yeah.
have people come along with you when or if they're ready.
I guess that's the sad truth of it all. It's like the if part of it might not ever come. But I think it's at least important to, like you said, I mean, live your life palms open, but also lead by example and be like, hey, like I'm trying this new thing called the gym. It's really awesome. It's really great. Um,
Yeah, well, think about like people that go to the gym all the time, right? Like too many people, they go to the gym, they love the gym. I like the gym, but then they go around telling other people like you're not good enough unless you go to the gym with me, or
yeah.
you're not healthy, you're not this, you're not that. Do you think that's going to want people to go to the gym more, or do you think it's going to just make you look like an asshole? Because it's probably just going to make you look like an asshole and repulse
Yeah.
people from the gym. So we all need to be very cautious on this. It's like therapy, right? Like if someone, there are many people in life that you walk around the street, you can see homeless people, crack addicts, stuff like that, and be like, "Oh, like, if only I told this person the right thing, then they'd be able to figure out. If only I knew the right words of combinations. If only I knew, like, how to make this." Again, we're making a complicated problem. We're making a complex problem into a complicated problem, that there must be a right answer, but there isn't, because just like therapy, you can't help somebody that doesn't want to be helped. If you take a couple, put them into a marriage and family therapist, and like maybe the wife really wants to work on the problems and really wants to get better at communicating, but the husband is just a POS. He's like, I'm not going to change. I'm perfect. Nothing is going to change because most people don't want to change. It's only until people, and this is the unfortunate reality of it, change only typically happens when the pain of what you know to be true becomes greater than the fear of change.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. Wish it wasn't, but it is. Which truth would that be?
That would be a subjective truth.
Subjective. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Because it only applies to the individual. At what point is the pain strong enough for you to make change?
Yeah, because objective.
Wouldn't matter because you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be able to make that choice because you wouldn't exist anymore. Just think of it that way.
Yeah.
Objective, if people are gone, these don't matter. It's still going to continue.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter if we're here or not here. Subjective is it only matters to me. Think of for subjective, like what is the best food type?
Okay.
Subjective truth. It's not an objective truth. Intersubjective truth are things that we only believe exist because it exists. Intersubjective truth might be perfect in that saying, like, okay, money is an intersubjective truth. Money only has power because we all believe it does. An example of this might be if you decide to say, like, okay, I believe that grass clippings are the new currency. And in my world, grass clippings are the real currency. And you walk into a store and you just dropping grass clippings on top of the counter after you bought your snacks. Do you think the person's going to take that and be like, oh yeah, for sure, this is definitely currency because if you believe it's currency? No, that's only a subjective truth, but it's not an intersubjective truth. Enough people need to believe that it works for it to be intersubjective truth. Now, if you and your best friend decide grass clippings is the way that we're going to use as a currency, and you both accept that, now it's an intersubjective truth between you two. But it does not work if you go into the grander population of the world and try walking into a Walmart to buy your snacks. It only works within that small ecosystem, not within the grander ecosystem of the world, or the civilization, or the culture, or the family. There are intersubjective truths all the way up and all the way down, from you and your best friend to you
Yeah.
and your family to you and your society, your culture, your nation, your nations. Like think of the United Nations. That is an intersubjective truth. The axis of evil, intersubjective truth. Each country individually, intersubjective truth.
Because it exists, because we as a people agree that it exists.
Yep.
Okay.
Same thing. Like say we did want to say, hey, we're going to invade Greenland and take Greenland and say it's ours. Most people are going to fight that for a while, and then eventually just be like, okay, it is what it is. Texas and California and Arizona and New Mexico all used to be a part of Mexico.
Yeah.
That's why so much of the history has to do with Mexican history. New Mexico is called New freaking Mexico because we just straight up took it. We took land, drew a fake map on it, and said, this is ours. Intersubjective truth. And enough people believed it for enough time that it became true. Intersubjective truth. But if enough people believe the opposite for enough time, then it would also become true. Just a different form of truth. Not the truth, not the logos, not divine truth, but true nonetheless. I think the more you kind of go down this rabbit hole, the more you realize majority of what I think I know is just a intersubjective truth or a subjective truth. I'm very rarely ever working with objective truth. And I am almost never, I am probably most likely never working with the logos, working with divine truth. But my goal is to try to work within that system that I can't have access to.
You know, I felt confident. I felt confident until we like got to like the logos. And I'm like, man, that's it's out of my wheelhouse.
It's out of everyone's wheelhouse.
Yeah.
That the only point of it, the only reason I bring it up is not to say like you're never going to figure this out.
Yeah.
But to also realize like, okay then. So there aren't simple rules.
Yeah.
And anyone that says they know it, they don't. Because if they did, they wouldn't be trying to bring you along. You would want to follow them naturally because they're living in accordance with nature, with reality, with the way things actually work. And they'd probably be freaking super successful, no problems in life. But we all know that we're human beings. We all have problems in life. So I want to get back to money. And I want to talk about the 4 variables behind every financial decision. Every good financial answer depends on 4 key areas. Number 1 is your goal. What are you actually trying to do? Number 2 is your timeline. When do you need to do it by? Number 3 is your risk tolerance. How much uncertainty can you handle? And then number 4 is your stability. What can you actually afford right now? Actually, as I think about it, there's probably more than just 4, but let's just say for right now, like it depends on those key variables. So without knowing these, the question can't be answered honestly. And that's why real planning always starts with understanding the person. And then, like we talked about when we talked about rocks in my financial planning framework, most people don't know their goal. They don't know their timeline. They don't know their risk tolerance. They don't know their stability. And then they go to somebody else and they ask the question, hey, what's the answer to all these questions? What's the objective truth to these 4 questions that I'm trying to ask you right now? When in reality, no one can answer that but you, but the individual asking the question. I haven't brought this up in a long time, but I'm going to bring it up again. I've been doing this for a long time, working in finances, working with people. And people ask millions of questions when it comes to money. But in truth, they're asking really 2 questions. How much is enough? And am I going to be okay? And they go to anybody, they ask a million questions. They want Monte Carlo simulations and all this stuff to feel certain that I have enough and that I'm going to be okay. But in reality, the only person that can answer that is you. Tomorrow, you could be a billionaire, the most richest person in the world. Tomorrow, as an intersubjective truth, the United States governments can say, we're no longer accepting dollars anymore. The American USD is now done. We are accepting, I don't know, carpet. Like we're now accepting like carpet shavings. Like that's our new thing. Are you going to be okay? How much is enough? You have to defy that for yourself because intersubjective truths can change. Subjective truth we know can change. So you need to be okay with that and realize like you really don't own anything. Too many people go through life, oh, I own my house, I own these things, I own all this stuff. I believe that living in accordance with nature is realizing that you only borrowed these things. And at some point, they will go back to where they belong.
You know, I knew this episode was going to be a thinker of an episode. I didn't think I'm going to like, after today's episode, I'm going to have to take the notes and just like sit with my biggest questions for myself and just kind of understand. And I guess that's what these philosophy episodes are all about. It's all about finding your truth or your version of the truth and being okay with that.
Yep. And then also realizing that your version of the truth is not actually the truth, and then keep on trying to work on that and growing. And that's actually a really good segue to talk about why internet financial advice feels so good, but can often be very, very wrong. Online advice often gives you clear rules, like you always pay off debt first, you invest early, you always buy real estate, you always save 15%, you always follow the 50-30-20 rule. These rules work sometimes, but they never work always. Simple rules work for complicated problems, but judgment is required for complex problems. And remember that we live in a world, money lives in a complex system. There is no right answer. So when you hear these people saying, oh, yeah, do this, do this, do this, they're trying to make you think that this is a complicated situation. This is a complicated problem that has it has a right answer, just like a Rubik's Cube does. Complicated. It's hard to figure out if you don't know what you're doing, but it does have an answer. But in this, in reality, in money, in terms of what should I do with my life? How should I save? All these things. These are complex problems that don't have a right answer. So the real question behind your money questions, when someone asks, should I buy a house? Should I invest? Should I change jobs? Should I retire early? They're often really asking very different questions. What they're really asking is, am I safe? Am I behind? Am I doing this right? Will I regret this in the future? Good financial advice isn't about giving you rules to follow. It's about helping someone understand what's true for their life right now. What do they want out of this life? Too many people think that a good financial plan has to do with this really big booklet that I'm going to get, and that's going to be my financial plan. But in truth, financial planning really happens in the conversation, in discovering for yourself, what is it that I actually want out of this life? And how can I help money facilitate for that with me? Money is not the goal. It helps facilitate the goal. And most people, they never have these conversations, or when they do, they do it in their heads, and they give themselves so many mental outs that they end up saying, oh, it must be a monetary figure, rather than having somebody else question them. That's why therapy works so well. That's why meditation works so well. It's getting you to understand yourself, not the inner subjective truths that have been placed onto you.
I guess it's what I'm kind of hearing also is that you really have to figure out what's intersubjective truths and truths have been placed on you that you have grown up believing and really decipher if those are serving you.
Yep. I think in life, one of the biggest things you need to ask yourself is this thought serving me? Like, you can think and believe anything that you want, but you have to remember, like, is this thought serving me? Too many people, we live in a place of depression or a place of anxiety, and I live in both of those places. And you can still ask yourself, is this thought serving me? I'll teach you one of the greatest things I ever learned from one of my teachers in Buddhism. And I kind of used this analogy before, but I'm gonna use a different one. It's imagine yourself, you're sitting in like a train station, right? And there's a bunch of trains coming, and they're coming at different times. You have a ticket that lets you get on any train anywhere you want to go. If you don't know where you're going, you just start hopping on random trains. Well, you're never going to get where you want to go. You're just going to start getting on trains and moving in different directions. But if we think about these trains as our thoughts, you can decide if I want to get on a train or not get on a train. But too many people, as a thought comes in, there's like, I'm going to hop on this train and see where this train goes. I'm going to hop on this train and see where this train goes. We end up wherever the hell we end up without realizing that your choice, you have a choice to get on the train or not. Thoughts are just like those trains. You can let them pass. You can sit there. The train can stop, board some people up and disappear. And you can just sit there. But too many people that take it to this point of like, all right, so my goal in becoming mindful is to stop all the trains from even working inside the station. No, the goal is to realize that the train will come and the train will pass, and you don't need to jump on it. So you get to choose which train do I want to hop on? Which train is going to take me to my goal? Which train of thought is going to get me where I want to go. And then you get to decide. That means I get to choose whatever train I want. Therefore, I get to choose how I want to think about things. But you also need to realize that in that choosing, there's a lot of stuff going on, like all at the same time. Maybe you don't have access to what the next thought is that's going to come into your head, but you have access to decide am I going to follow this? Am I going to hop on this train or not? Or am I just going to do and think that's which moves me towards my goals?
Silence from my end. Silence. I love that. I love that analogy. I think that's a really great analogy. I'm just sitting here picturing and just thinking about that one. Add it to the list of things to think about tonight. Is that going to be part of our action step today? Is sit with open palms, but also visualize the thoughts as trains. And I'm
You
curious to
can do
see what.
whatever you want. Our action step actually this week is next time you ask a financial question, you hear the answer, it depends. I want you to not get frustrated. Because I know what it's like, because I used to ask that question too, all the time. I'm thinking that there must be a right answer. But the more that you go down into this rabbit hole, the more you realize there is no right answer. Kind of like medical advice, right? You go to the doctor, hey, doctor, I'm feeling sick. What's the one thing that I need to do to fix it? They're like, well, you need to do this, this, and this, and this. It depends. You know, if you heard like, oh, hey, this person you don't know is sick. What's the right thing to do? You're going to say, it depends. Like, what are they sick with? What's their lifestyle like? What's going on? You're not going to say, oh, yeah, you just have to drink more water. Like, or you just, oh, you just eat this, drink more, eat more honey and you'll be fine. You don't know the answer. So you need to know all of these things. We take these truths to be self-evident when they're in different domains, but with money, we think there must be an objective correct answer. So I want you to ask yourself, when you hear that, you feel that frustration, ask yourself, depends on what? Because that's where the real answer lives. It depends on what? And then you are the one that needs to answer those questions. Another thing, if you want to do something, would be, meditate on these things, Dominic, and like to our listeners too, meditate on objective, subjective, intersubjective truths. Think about what is the logos, what is what I call divine truth. You're never going to, if you figure it out, then, give me a call. Like, you're probably going to like disappear from this reality and like, freaking be in heaven or something. But like, try to figure these types of things out and realize that when someone comes to you saying, I know what the right rules are, I know everything, you can look at them and be like, okay. That's all you have to do. Okay. I don't have to take it as truth because it's not truth. And I also don't have to take offense to it, because you can also realize that just because something is true to me, that doesn't mean it needs to be true to everybody else. People want financial rules, but life runs on causes and conditions outside of our control. The more your decisions involve time, the more they involve people, the more that they have uncertainty, the less likely there is to be one clear answer. And that's why good financial advice, that's why good advice in general is, it depends.
That's got to do it for this episode, doesn't it? I don't know. I'm trying to think. I'm like, man, I don't know how much more I can take, because this is, I have so many thoughts I want to go and think about after this episode and just ponder and just journal a little bit. Is there anything else for today's episode, Chris, that we're missing?
No, I would say sit with this. And
Yeah.
if your brain feels a little worn, a little like, I don't know anything anymore, like I thought I knew everything and now I don't, that's the point. That's the point of philosophy. I remember the first time I took a philosophy class in college and I sat there for the first time in my life and I was like, my brain was like blown open. I was like, I don't know if anything's true anymore. Like, do I exist? Like, if I die, will it even matter? Like, and it's very destabilizing. And that's, I think, the reason why most people, when they take a philosophy class, say, this is stupid. I don't want to think about this. It's not true. It's not objective truth. But in reality, we're never really we're very rarely working in objective truth. Objective truth is complicated, but it's not complex. We want there to be one right answer, but there is not. So sit with these things. Be okay with the uncomfortability and come to the realization that being uncomfortable is good. It's what helps you grow. Same thing when you work out. You're not comfortable, but that's where the growth happens. So, Dominic, will you close us out for the week?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, that's going to do it here at the Fi Guys. I really hope that you took a lot of notes, whether that's mental, preferably physical, and you just sit with these for the next week, for this lifetime, right? Be aware of what we've talked about today and what we've kind of learned, and be on the lookout for these things in reality. And I think that could be part of the action step as well. It's like when you go out and drive and like, oh, is that an objective truth? Is that a subjective? Which one is it? Um, but I hope you guys did take a lot out of this. I know I took a bunch out of this one. This was a very interesting and exciting one for me. And I thank you, Chris, for bestowing such great knowledge on this topic. Um, we will see you guys back here on Monday. Thank you for the 2-part episode, as always. And I'm Dom. He's Chris. Make sure to spread the word of the Fi Guys. And I think everybody needs a little bit more truth, whether that's their truth or our truth or a truth. Share this episode with them and let's make the world a little bit better of a place. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Later.
Peace.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests, not the podcast sponsor. It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.